Who is Dirty Dan?
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. We are here to look at the action from Monday in the NBA. 7 games on, do a bit of an injury recap and then preview the 6 games for Tuesday. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. The first game that we're going to take a look at here, the Washington Wizards get the big win over the Pistons on the road, 133-119. Brad Beal was fantastic. 35 points, 10 assists, 5 triples, 37 minutes, entirely, completely efficient, 50% from the field, 65 true shooting. Really strong stuff from Beal. Isaiah Thomas was back. He went straight back into the starting lineup and he looked great. 23 points, 5 triples, 6 assists, 69% shooting.
Giggity.
Now, he was trending up a little bit before the calf injury. He probably is worth an add in a 12-team format, just if you're looking for points especially, but I don't think he's going to be this excellent top 50 sort of a guy, but that was strong. Well, Ish Smith, despite moving back to the bench, despite the minutes being low, was pretty good. 10, 4, and 7, 3 steals and 2 blocks. Now, the 7 assists, the 3 steals, the 2 blocks, they're not things that are likely to continue, so it's unlikely for me that Smith maintains 12-team value, but this, of course, was excellent. Davis Bertans, he had an off game last time, but was pretty good here. 17 in 36 minutes with 3 threes, 4 rebounds and 3 assists. He got the extra minutes because Rui Hachimura copped a kick in the dick and played just 7 minutes, 7 points in 17 minutes for Hachimura. They called it a groin contusion. We don't know anymore at this point as to whether he is going to miss time. While Jan Mahinmi at the end of the game did have to go to the locker room with some stitches in his head, he was the starting center because Tom Bryant and Flaming Mo Wagner were both out of the lineup. Mahinmi had 9 and 8, and a more solid back-end 16-team, 14-team league type value. Troy Brown had been playing well. He wasn't that good here, but 10, 6, and 2 is still enough to be an okay 14-team league guy at this point. Admiral Schofield also in the rotation. For the Pistons, the Shark, Bruce Brown.
Baby shark, do-do-do-do-do.
Now, at this point, we should have, or start in the next day or so, should have some sort of update on Reggie Jackson's back. Initially, it was 2 weeks, and that was 2 weeks ago. But we don't know at this point. But I'm getting to get the feeling that maybe Brown actually does keep this starting spot over Jackson because he's been really good, especially the last 2 games. 20 points for Brown. Now, it does help, again, when you're against the Wizards, and that does skew some things. 2 triples, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks. He's providing value that enables him to be rostered in way more leagues than he's currently rostered in. He was an 8 of 8 from the line, which is something not usual for him. He was 2 of 4 from 3, 50% from the field. An unbelievable game from Brown. He's an interesting 16-teamer and maybe even 14-team leaguer. This Pistons team, of course, was without the big avocado Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin. Derrick Rose was fantastic, 22, 6, and 8. He's going to be a really key piece if Griffin has to miss time, while the Duck Luke Kennard should be scooped up everywhere, 14, 6, and 6, because if Griffin is bothered by this knee, which you'd have to assume that he is, we're going to see a lot more Kennard and a lot higher usage for the Duck. With both Drummond and Griffin out, Markieff Morris started 33 minutes, 22, 5, and 3. That's really, really strong from Markieff. We know at the start of the season when Griffin was out, he wasn't really troubling the scorers for 12-team formats, so I'm not rushing to go and grab Markieff here, but it's clear he is going to get the bulk of these minutes over the crucifix Christian Wood, who played just the 28 minutes here, and Wood wasn't fantastic. 2 of 8 from the line, 12 and 6 are still in a block is still okay, but I wouldn't be rushing, falling over myself to go and add Wood in a 12-teamer. He's an interesting 14-team league guy, and for God's sake, he is significantly better than Thon Maker, who literally he's not an NBA player at this point in his career, and I'm not really ever sure that he is going to be. But Morris, more of a 14-team ad. Wood probably similar in that same sort of boat as a 14-team ad if Griffin remains out. But again, the addition of Drummond back into this lineup will impact Morris, it'll impact Wood, it'll impact McCare, it'll impact Brown and Kennard. All these guys will be a carry-on effect when Drummond does eventually rejoin the lineup. The next game up, another smashing. The Toronto Raptors, they took it to the Cleveland Cavaliers. So we had the Cavs 113, the Raptors 133 in this one. Big game from Darius Garland, who played 38 minutes, 20 points with 4 triples, 5 assists, and 2 steals. I thought we'd see some of these games from Garland more often. These are the sort of things I thought we'd see a little bit more second half of the season, and we still may. It's been a struggle, but he did play well in when he was mixed in with the bench units here, so it is something to watch. He's probably not a 12-team out. He's more of a luxury type stash situation, but if he continues to improve, this will be pretty strong. The Padawan Colin Sexton had 25, 5, and 4. Of course, he had a 0-0 as well, while Larry Nance had 7 and 6 in his 23 minutes. But in a game that Kevin Love plays 25 minutes, Nance playing just 23 is, again, a real issue, and it's impossible to hold if you're looking to get stats out of that position right now. Thompson had 18 and 8. That's completely fine. It's not exciting. The block rate has dropped from what it was at the beginning of the season, while Love had 9, 7, and 4. He is a wild, wild roller coaster at the moment. Kevin Porter Jr., 9 points, 4 assists, 23 minutes. Unless they fully commit to being a 30-minute-a-night guy, he's not going to be a 12-team league player. Maybe that happens at some point. He has concerns with some of his peripheral numbers, poor rebound numbers. The assists have been a surprise this year. The steals have been relatively okay as well. And he's hitting threes, but he's still a little bit off from being a 12-team league player. Interesting stuff in Toronto with Stormin, Norman Powell absolutely dominating. Now, again, the caveat is you're playing Cleveland and guards have the easiest of time going up against them. But 26, 6, and 5, 4 triples, 4 steals, and a block is fantastic. Of course, 73% shooting is not a realistic number for Powell, but over the last month, he's a top 40 player, and that is an astonishing number for Norman Powell, top 80 over the course of the season. Now, there are a few things that are working in his favor there. We've had a big Lowry injury, followed by a Van Vliet injury, which has given him more minutes, more usage, but he is scoring at a really high rate. Now, scoring and steals are his number 1 fantasy category over the last month, or number 1 and number 2. Steals at 1.5 a game, way up from anything he's done in his career, and shooting 54 from the field. So there are some significant signs of regression coming from Powell. But after the game, Nick Nurse made a point of saying that there could be a change in the starting lineup. The starting lineup could be fluid because of how well he's played. Now, does that mean he starts over Van Vliet, who's also been excellent, or does he start over OG Anunoby,
Hello there.
who has not been excellent? Regardless, Anunoby is going to lose minutes, and I think that he is going to be a 10 and 12 team league drop if he's not already. Powell is worth at least having. He is more of that guy that is concentrated in the points category. The steals are coming in nice, but it's just points and threes and surprise efficiency at the moment from Powell. This is a bloke, of course, remember, that hasn't always been this excellently efficient type of a guy. This is a real step up, especially in the last month from Storm, but he's putting up some really, really good numbers at the moment. And absolutely has to have value and has to be someone that we look at as an option to add or have in 12-team leagues at this point, given how well he's playing and the way that Anunoby's struggling. But that fit, if it's going to be Powell and Van Vliet and Lowry, like how do those 3 guys all work together? Someone's going to take a haircut at some point. You just don't know which way it's going to go, but it is a massively, massively strong run from Powell, who is also shooting 68% over his last 4 games. So it could be a real sell high moment on Norm as well. Siakam had 33, 4 and 4. Lowry had 24 and 11, while the Jedi OG Anunoby had 12 and 9, but only the 28 minutes, and that's the concern. Marc Gasol started out well, but these are the lines that worry me about Gasol. 8 and 5 with 3 assists in 27 minutes. Like, those are not 12-team league numbers. He's been putting up really strong numbers after I said, you know what, maybe he's a guy that we consider dropping when everyone's healthy. But this is what I was worried about. Let's see where it all goes. But if this is what the norm is from Gasol, then it is hard to see him as a rock-solid 12-team league guy. Hollis Jefferson out of the rotation. The water boy Chris Boucher took his minutes. Patty McCaw still stealing way too many minutes. 22 minutes there for Pat. He'll lose out when Van Vliet comes back. Almost definitely. But that Powell situation is a real intriguing one, and he is a pretty strong guy to add just to see where it goes, with the understanding that there is some real negative indicators in terms of how it moves going forward for Storm. But he's putting up some really, really big numbers at the moment, and that's fantastic for him. All right, on to the next game. Some interesting games in this little middle patch of the day. The Bulls choking away a huge lead to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Zach LaVine was massive here. 39 points in 34 minutes with 3 threes, 3 assists, and 2 steals. 60% shooting, 6 of 6 from the line, 41% usage. Fantastic stuff. But I don't know how the Bulls managed to choke away a lead like this. It was also great from Satoransky. 11, 6, and 6 with 3 steals and a block. His numbers had dropped down a little bit recently, but I think we should feel pretty confident about him as a 12-team league guy, while Chris Dunn didn't do anything else or didn't score much, but 5 assists and 3 steals, gets it done. 30 minutes. I feel like he's locked into a starter's role at least until Otto Porter returns, which is still weeks away. So if you're needing steals with a side of assists, then Dunn is going to provide that. upside is pretty low, but getting those sort of numbers is useful. Larry Markkinen, defensive numbers.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
13 points with 2 steals and 2 blocks. Not his best night, but still pretty strong, while Wendell Carter had 12 and 9 with 2 blocks as well. So the starters all doing their job. The bench left a lot to be desired. Denzel the Hammer Valentine still had his 2 threes with 10 points. You can use that in 14-teamers, probably more 16-teamers, but he's getting that value of being a scoring and points and threes type of a guy off the bench. Thad Young, who'd been playing well lately, did nothing. Daniel Gafford, who was in a 10-minute, 15-minute role, played 1 minute, was Boylan short in the rotation, and they still got smacked. They didn't get smacked, they got mentally smacked because they were up big and they should have won. On to the Thunder, Chris Paul was great. 30 and 10, 8 assists, 2 steals, 6 triples, 75% shooting. I do not think Paul is getting traded this season. I think the Thunder are going to be right in the mix for the playoffs. But the risk with him as an injured guy coming up is always there for a guy like Paul. So if you are going to sell him. But don't go too low with the assumption, he's going to get shut down because they're tanking or they're not making the playoffs or he's getting traded. Because I'm not sure those things are all going to happen. The Italian cock, Danilo Gallinari.
Hands off my cock!
22, 6 and 4, 4 triples with 2 steals. Not a great shooting night, but still pretty strong otherwise. While Dennis Schroeder, it's really impossible to leave him on the wire in 12-team leagues. 18, 4 and 5 with 2 blocks and 2 threes. You just got to watch your free throws. Nerlens Noel, he did what he needs to do. 1 steal, 2 blocks, 20 minutes. That's just what you need out of him. While Steven Adams played his 28 minutes, 9 and 11. And that real hot streak that Adams was riding seems to have cooled back off here. Terry Ferguson returned. He had 12 points with 4 threes. That's more than you can expect from him on most nights. He is a deep league 3-point streamer, but with him back, Abdul Nadir only the 15 minutes, and it was a real turd from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. 7 and 3 in 34 minutes. This is a real low point for Gilgeous-Alexander. The shot's not going in. The peripherals aren't there. He is a really, really, really buy low guy. Not a drop, but a real buy low option to try and get him. Next up, we had speaking of choking away, the San Antonio Spurs were up huge on the Rockets and they lose at 109, 107. LaMarcus Aldridge, 19, 13 and 4 with 1 steal and 2 blocks, still somehow a minus 10. It's just confusing how him and DeRozan all the time, they put up good numbers and they're good players, but they consistently seem to be negative factors and I don't know why that is. DeJounte Murray, 29 minutes, 16 and 5, 2 steals and a block, don't leave him on any wires, while maximum Derrick White.
Maximum Derrick.
Now, the good thing is here, he had 16 and 6. The other good thing is he played together alongside DeJounte Murray. Hopefully, we can get them playing 27 minutes a night or 30 and 27. It feels like we're a long way away from that, and if you want to drop White, do it. But if we see him push into high 20s, he's got to be a 12-team league ad. DeRozan had 12, 5 and 5. He struggled a little bit, while Bryn Forbes, who had been absolute garbage recently, really good. 18 points, 6 triples. I think he hit his first 5 shots, so it did cool off after that. He is only a Terry Ferguson type 3-point streamer. Trey Lyles started for, sure, whatever reason. 20 minutes for him on Rudy Gay, had 21 minutes and a double-double, and that meant that the opportunities for Jakob Poeltl were limited. 10 minutes for Poeltl. His upside is limited, and if he's only playing this many minutes, then he's not a 12-team league guy. For the Rockets, Westbrook, 31 and 10. Hit his free throws. Maybe the problem's fixed. It's feeling a bit that way. Clint Capella, 15 and 15 with 3 blocks as well, was pretty good. Well, Jimmy Harden, a terrible field goal percentage night, 10 of 29, but 28, 8 and 7 with 4 threes is okay by me. Benny McLemore, he got it done with the scoring. 17 points with 4 triples in 29 minutes. He's a nice 14-team league guy. While Dan House, get rid of him. Not a 12-team league guy. A lot of what he was doing felt very illusionary at the beginning of the season. I was skeptical to buy in and went, you know what, the numbers are there. Let's go. Let's add him. Let's move on. Let's go grab someone else. Now, Austin Rivers, only the 11 minutes, as those minutes are going towards McLemore because he is playing at a higher level at the moment. The next game up, the Miami Heat go down to the Memphis Grizzlies on the road. Big performance from Memphis. Bam Adebayo was fantastic again. 14 and 13 with 5 assists, 3 steals and 3 blocks. This guy is an absolute monster. Jimmy Butler, 25, 4 and 8. Well, Derrick Jones Jr., 31 minutes, 15 points, 4 steals, and 2 blocks. We know he's a defensive stats guy, but with Justice Winslow out, he's getting more minutes, and he is a 14-team league ad, and he's probably close to a 12-team stream type of option. Of course, there was no Johnson, there was no Winslow, there was no Waiters, there was no Dragic. Tyler Hero played 38 minutes. It was also helped by the fact that the Spur, Dunk Robinson, was in foul trouble. So 22 points for Hero, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. And while these guys are injured, he does have stream value. Now, he didn't shoot well, of course, 35% from the field, but that volume is encouraging, while Kendrick Nunn had 18, 2 and 3. Not his best night, but still, these guys have that value while the other players are banged up. As for the Spur himself, he did what he needed to do. Dunk Robinson, 4 triples and 12 points. Only the 23 minutes due to foul trouble. He's got that value as a three-point guy. I wouldn't say he's a 100% 12-team lock, but the minutes are there at the moment. Olynyk only 18 minutes. Myers Leonard only 17 minutes as players like Jones and Hero took up the extra slack. For Memphis, Ja Morant, 20 and 10, fantastic from him, while Jonas Valanciunas, who's been really quiet, was big as well. He had 21 and 10 with 2 blocks on 89% shooting. I still worry about what happens with him at the end of the season, but we just got to hold tight at the moment. Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr., just an ugly-ass shot, but 15 points, all coming from 3, 5 rebounds and 2 steals. One of his quieter nights, but encouragingly, he played 35 minutes, while D'Anthony Melton, man, this guy looks really good. This was the cost that the Phoenix Suns had to use to get off of Josh Jackson's contract. What a woof of a trade that is. 16, 7, and 4. He is overtaking Tyus Jones. He is playing mid-20s in minutes almost every night. I think he's a better player than Dylan Brooks, and I think that he is a 14-team league ad, and let's see where it goes from here. Really strong stuff. Brandon Clark also a 12-teamer, 14 and 9, while Brooksy, 9 points in 23 minutes for Dylan. He is like this. He's hot and cold, and when the shot doesn't fall, usually he provides very little. Now, he's been pretty good on steals for most of this season, but that is always the risk with him. Crowder had 10 and 6, and he is one of the most hot and cold players in the NBA. While Tyus Jones, I think he's cooked. Melton is taking over that backup role. Melton is better than him. Melton is hustling. He's scoring. I think Melton could be a starting point guard in the NBA at some point. It obviously won't be in Memphis, but could he be a starter next to Morant? It's pretty bloody enticing. I really like what's happening here in Memphis. Melton looks super impressive. I was impressed with him last season and impressed with him now, so good to see him putting up those numbers. Next up, the Dallas Mavericks. What a win this is. On the road, no Luka Doncic against a team that's won 18 in a row, the Milwaukee Bucks. The Mavericks win at 120-116. Your mate, Kristaps Porzingis. 26 and 12 with 4 triples and 2 blocks. We talked about him being more aggressive with Doncic out. That happened. Tim Hardaway, he was aggressive. He took 10 shots. He only hit one of them, 6 and 4. And this is always the worry I've had with Hardaway talking about it. Like, his value is so high on usage and efficiency. And if the shot isn't there, what the hell else is he doing? I think we've still got to hold on to him, but he was thoroughly outplayed by Seth Curry in this one. Curry had 26 points in 26 minutes as an interesting 14-team league guy. As expected, the burner, Jalen Brunson, he started for Luka Doncic. He put up 13, 4, and 11 in 32 minutes. He is a 12-team ad, while Delon Wright, 19 minutes, 13, 3, and 2, 4 steals and a block. 14-team definite ad, probably is a short-term 12-teamer as well. That is what we were expecting from Delon this season, and he's obviously been disappointing. The curious thing is he only played 19 minutes. Is the groin still bothering him? I would have to assume yes, because that's a good line. Maxi Kleber outplayed Dwight Powell, 10 and 7 for Max, while Dwight had 4 and 8 in his 19 minutes. These are just 14 to 16 team league players. Well, Justin Jackson, he did his best to do nothing. 7 points in 17 minutes. On to the Bucks. Let's talk about Delaware Jordan, the big ragu, Donte DiVincenzo. 5, 10, and 9, 3 steals and a block in 30 minutes. He is a 12-team league ad. Is he ahead of Brunson? No. Is he ahead of Delon Wright? Probably. Really, really strong stuff from Donte. Yanni had 48 and 14, while Kyle Korver knocked in 5 triples for 17 points. Don't read too much into that. Georgie Hill, a solid enough 14-team league ad, a deeper 12s guy, 10 and 2 with 3 assists and 2 steals. His steal rate is really, really high this season, as is his 3-point shooting and assist numbers. Wes Matthews is doing jack shit, while Brook Lopez, this is a buy low. 20 minutes, 3 points, can't do anything at the moment. It is a real buy low. Like, don't be throwing out your Hassan Whitesides or a mid-round type of a guy. Throw your back-end guys, because people are ready to drop him. He's dropped in plenty of leagues. I would add him, but he's not going to be last year's Brook Lopez. As long as you have that expectation that he's not going to be that good, I think you will be okay. But this is a real buy low opportunity for Brook Lopez. Then we go on to the last game of the night. The Portland Trail Blazers get the narrow victory over the Suns, 111-110. I talked about this on yesterday's show, saying CJ McCollum had a real stinker of a run, so he was due for a big one. While 40 minutes, 30 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal and a block on 55% shooting. How does that strike you for a big one? He is just as likely to put together a string of 4 or 5 strong games in a row and then go back to shitting the bed, making him, give him 2 games like this, sell him high, wait for the drop-off, buy him low. That's the way you approach CJ McCollum. It might not always work, but historically there's a good reason why I say that. It's because that's what he's done a lot. Melo was great as well, 23 and 8, but also helped peripherally, 4 triples, 2 steals, 3 blocks, 50% shooting. Now this makes up for the night where he has 14 and 5 on 32% shooting. Those peripheral numbers are just an added bonus. He's a 12-team league guy. You still have to be mindful of the field goal percentage and realize this is not a realistic every night sort of line, but he has been much better than I anticipated he would be this season. Hassan Whiteside.
The world.
Only 10 points, but 14 boards, 3 blocks, continues to rack up big fantasy numbers. I am not worried about Yusuf Nurkic coming back and taking too much off the top here for Whiteside. I think he'll be a starter all season, and the numbers will be pretty strong, even if sometimes his on-court play leaves a little bit to be desired. Well, this was the best Kent Bazemore game we've seen since Rocket Rodney Hood went down. 11 points, but 3 threes, 3 steals, and a block. That is what Bazemore brings. He's like the Matisse Thybulle, a Nerlens Noel, a Derrick Jones Jr. type. You need some defensive numbers. He can often add assists and threes in there. He can be of use. If you don't need it, then he gives you nothing. So he's more of a 14-team must roster versus a 12-teamer, but he does have some value in 12-team leagues. Of course, he hasn't been this good in most of the games. Mario Hezonja left this game early with back spasms.
It's me, Mario.
So we got more minutes for Gaz Trent, who played 13 minutes, while Anthony Simons was rough. 2 points in 18 minutes. He's a long way off being a standard league player. Wasn't also a great Damian Lillard night. 27 points with 5 assists is pretty good still for a not great night. For the Suns, Devin Booker was out, ravishing Rick Rubio. Triple-doubled, 10, 11, and 14 with 2 steals. The shot wasn't there, but the big numbers otherwise. And Kelly Oubre also benefited from Booker's absence. 24 points with 3 steals and a block. Those defensive numbers that Oubre brings are very, very valuable. Aaron Baines, only 19 minutes, but 3 blocks and 13 points. But tomorrow, DeAndre Ayton is back. So Baines' value, look, he probably still plays 19 minutes. He is not a 12-team league guy. While Frank the Tank Kaminsky had 17, 5, and 5 in 30 minutes, that you'd have to imagine that drops pretty significantly. It's probably your last opportunity to sell high on Dario Saric, 17 and 7 in 31 minutes, while 31 minutes also for McCall Bridges, who had 8 and 10 with 2 steals and a block. Now, while Devin Booker is out, Bridges is providing solid enough stream value. When Devin returns, he goes back to being more of that 16-team league guy. And Cam Johnson, another one of those players, we'd say don't look, if the player's best category ranks him as the 90th best guy in a standard league because he's hitting threes, his best category is threes, then really value whether you want to use that draft pick on him because you can find threes off the wire. Another 3 triples here for Cameron Johnson, who is shaping up to be this season's Landry Shamet, a guy that contributes little in other areas but hits threes and does it at a really high volume or high percentage, and that is exactly what Cameron Johnson is doing. Alia Kobo and Javon Carter look to have jumped ahead of Ty Jerome in the rotation and getting extra minutes here because both Devin Booker and Tyler Johnson were sidelined in this game. Let's flip over now and have a look at some injury news for us to talk about. The Rock DJ Robbie Williams is dealing with some edema in his hip. He's going to be out for the next few weeks. That means that Enes Kanter and Vanilla Tice are going to be splitting those minutes at center. That gives Kanter a little bit of a boost for 14-teamers, not 12s. And Tice is probably still a 14-team leaguer as well. And of course, Williams can be dropped outside of those dynasty formats. JJ Redick is going to miss tomorrow with a groin injury. That should mean more minutes for Josh the Hitman Hart and probably for Lonzo Ball as well. And then either Frank Jackson or Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Frank and Nickeil, they are going to get extra minutes there in Redick's absence. Blake Griffin's knee didn't play today. The MRI was done. We don't know the results. I'm extremely worried about what is going on here with Griffin's knee. He is not a drop, but is real worrisome. While Rui Hachimura copped a groin contusion, Davis Bertans started in place of him. Hachimura is still a hold, at least until Thomas Bryant returns, unless we hear any worse injury news here that does keep him out for a bit of time. While Paul Washington Jr., we heard initially 5 games with his broken finger, but the Hornets announced today that he was having surgery on that finger. I spoke with Jeff Stotts of InStreetClothes.com, the best injury database source that you can find, and he said that when pinky fractures require surgery, the average time missed is 18 games, which is about 5 to 6 weeks worth. So I think those 5 games that were initially mentioned for Washington, you should wipe that out. And I think we're looking at January for a return will be more realistic. That means that Marvin Williams likely slides into a larger role, more minutes for Miles Bridges. Not that he's done anything with them, but maybe Marvin in a 14-teamer you could look to go and add in this situation. Maybe there's more coming for Nick Batum, and maybe we get more of that Bismack Biyombo Cody Zeller combination, which worked so well last game. Of course, Marvin and Batum were both out of that one, almost forcing James Brago's hand to put those two guys together. How they work on Tuesday is going to be very instructive as to how this value shakes out with Washington done. Now, if you wanted to drop Washington because he could be out for a extended period of time, we don't know that for sure. This is just what we've heard from them saying, additional information saying there's going to be surgery. So that's my assumption that surgery is not going to be back in a week from a finger surgery, surgery on a fractured finger. That means it's not likely a simple situation. So I'd be really stunned if he is back in that week. If you do need to drop him in a 10-team league, I totally understand it. He's been quite up and down in terms of his level of production so far this season. Let's move on to talk about Tuesday's games now. We do have 6 games in the NBA on the slate. We're going to be looking at FanDuel pricing. All right, let's look at the Lakers and the Pacers. We're looking, of course, at FanDuel pricing today. Tone Davis has appeared on the injury report as questionable. No surprise there after spraining his ankle last game, while Rajon Rondo is probable. If Davis does miss, especially with Kyle Kuzma, the future MVP, already ruled out, that power forward spot's looking pretty thin. I imagine that we get Jared Dudley playing those minutes, but do they call up someone like Devontae Kachuk out of the G League? Is it Taylor Horton-Tucker that comes up? Does Kostas Antetokounmpo get an option there? There are plenty of absolutely really, really bad players that could be in for some minutes there. Of course, it means that no Anthony Davis at the 5, so McGee and Howard would get those center minutes there as well. So some truly interesting stuff if Davis does happen to sit. Of course, they could play LeBron exclusively at power forward, giving more minutes to Rondo, Caruso, Caldwell Pope, Green, and Bradley. That's probably the most likely, and even Quinn Cook and Troy Daniels can come in there. But we'll see exactly how that all works. But there could be some really interesting lineup decisions that have to be made with both Kuzma out and Davis questionable. No spread at this point for this game. If we look at the point guards, Brogdon is at 7,900. The Lakers are really good defensively. They're not as good defensively against point guards as other positions, and Brogo has been around that 35 to 38 mark most of this time. I think he's not bad as a solid option. Not sure he's a real high upside guy, while Rondo at 5,000 would be really interesting to me if Davis is out. Again, pushing LeBron more up to that power forward spot. That would give some value there for Rondo. McConnell's at 41. I'm not really interested in that, while Aaron Holiday's playing really well. He's at 4,700. He dropped 31 last game. He's doing it in relatively limited minutes. I don't know that I 100% trust it. I know he's going to get minutes, but that level of production seems a little bit far-fetched. Shooting guards, you've got Lamb at 5,300, who really has been struggling to get the playing time that is needed to get that sort of value most of the time, so that is hard to get excited about. Dan Green, KCP, Bradley, while they all could get more minutes in a Davis absence situation, I'm not sure they're really worth it, but if I'm going to look as a GPP option there, KCP would be the guy that could get some more shots. At small forward, Justin Holiday's at 37, no thanks. Tony Warren Jr.'s at 48. I like that price for Warren. He has not been great the last couple of games with a 20-point average over the last 3, but in a tournament, maybe we look at that. While LeBron James is at $11,000. Again, Davis out, he smashes that. I really, really like LeBron at this spot. You got Jared Dudley as well at minimum salary. He played 17 minutes last game and had 3 points before you get overly excited about him. At power forward, Tone Davis is at 10.7. If he plays, we love it. If we don't, we hate it. That's pretty obvious. Well, Domantas Sabonis is at $8,000. He's been more of like a $7,500 guy over the last couple of games, and the matchup's not fantastic for him. So I reckon we're okay with him, but he's not a must-roster guy. Then we look at the centers, JaVale and Dwight. Really good matchups for both of those guys. They could see in extended minutes if Davis is out, and at 38 for JaVale and 44 for Dwight, there is some value. I do like JaVale more than Dwight in this situation. While Miles Turner actually played well last game, he's at 4,300. The salary actually has come down to 6,000. The matchup's not a good one. I would be more interested in Turner as a GPP guy, and even then, not massively excited about it. The next game is the Sacramento Kings, the Charlotte Hornets. It looks likely that De'Aaron Fox is going to return. He's officially listed as questionable, but all the reports out of Sacramento are that he is going to be playing. While Charlotte, they are without Paul Washington Jr., Nick Batum is doubtful, while Marvin Williams is probable. So whether Marvin starts in his first game back from knee soreness, or they go to that Biyombo-Zala combo, I think they'd start Williams and then play him mid-20s in minutes and give Kid Gilchrist some minutes there and do a little bit of the Zala and Biyombo crossover as well. At point guard, We're looking at Terry Rozier at 7,400. Now, Rozier in the past has averaged 46 points against Sacramento. That's pretty strong. His recent production hasn't been anywhere near that level. He'd just be a tournament guy for me. Corey Joseph with Fox likely back, no thanks. And Darren comes in at $7,000. I think it's hard to see him playing 30-plus minutes in his first game back, so we'll leave that one alone. Bogdanovic was fantastic last game, but the return of Fox probably limits him. Not keen on that. While Bud Hield at 77 also has been playing some really, really big games, really high usage, handling the ball. Again, Fox's return is going to put a dampener on that, and that salary doesn't work for me. Devontae Graham's at 8,100. You look at that and go, yeah, that's a lot. And last game he shot poorly, but he was terrible in terms of shooting and still had 34 points. So can he get a 40 here? Like, he can probably do it sitting on his head, so I don't dislike him. I actually think he's a relatively strong option. Cody Martin, Dwayne Baker, Malik Monk, no thanks. At small forward, Miles Bridges is at 6,100. He's playing a lot of minutes, there's no doubt about that. He's doing absolutely nothing with them, there's also no doubt about that. 61 is a lot. He is a tournament guy only. While the pencil, Harrison Barnes. Barnesy. He's at 5,600, and while I don't like Harrison Barnes from a seasonal perspective, at 5,600 for him to get 26, 27 points, it's not an outrageous expectation. I wouldn't feel great about him, and definitely in tournaments he's got no interest to me. Maybe in cash he can be a lineup stabilizer type. While Kid Gilchrist, I don't really care that he gets minutes, and Trevor Ariza at 42, again, more of a seasonal league guy with his ability to get defensive stats rather than DFS. At power forward, Richaun Holmes, impossible to use him, even though this is one of the tastiest matchups for centers. He's at 6,100. If you're going to use him, it should only be in a tournament. The Bagley-Holmes rotational situation has been a constant pain right in my anus, and we'll see if that continues, and I'm going to bank on that it does. Therefore, I don't want to get too invested in Holmes. Nemanja Bjelica is at 5,200. That's a strong no, while Marv Williams at 37. That could be a really strong yes to me with Williams, especially if we hear that he's starting. That will work really well. Bags is at 6,500 and just not enough happening, even though the matchup, again, super positive going up against this Charlotte frontcourt. Speaking of the Charlotte frontcourt, Biyombo had 35 last game. Zeller had 39. Both of their salaries are way too high, 54 for Bismack and 57 for Cody. The risk of downside of that is way too high, especially against, again, a Kings team who's been pretty good at defending opposition power forwards and centers. There's too much of a risk at that elevated price to really consider them high-level DFS options at any point. The next one is the Atlanta Hawks and the New York Knickerbockers. The Knicks are favourite at home by 1.5 points, and the total is 220.5. Vanderpants Kevin Huerter is questionable after hurting his shoulder. I would be pretty shocked if he played, and if he plays, it'll be limited minutes, while Jabari Parker has cropped up as being probable with an ankle sprain. The Duke Wayne Ellington's out for New York. Trae Young's at $10,000. You can almost write him in at $45 a night at this point, so I like him at that salary. Lord Alfred Payton's at $55. He dropped 38 last game. The minutes are there. He's splitting them with Ntilikina, but he's producing. I think that Alfred is a guy to look at as a 30-point type of player. Therefore, I like him in this one. Ntilikina had a great game last time. I do not trust Frank to get 37 points a night. RJ Barrett has been trash really a lot of this season, averaging just 22 points over the last 5 at 6,300. I'm not going to get excited about that. Herder, no thank you. The Blues from Alan Crabb and Damo Dotson, also no thanks. But I do want to say thank you to Marcus Morris, because he's at 6,200, so that's a nice one for me. Really, really strong cash floor. 30 to 35 point guy against this Atlanta Hawks team, which we know has their, to be kind, defensive struggles, and he could be an option for you. DeAndre Hunter's at 52. I don't really think he is a fantastic DFS guy in the slightest, so not keen on him. Cam Reddish is also pretty poor, and the Fort Kevin Knox, if I could think of a word worse than poor, shithouse, that's what Kevin Knox is. At power forward, Jabari Parker's at 6,000. He's more of a $5,000 guy at this point. The minutes, he can't seem to push to 30. He's not really getting you this 30 points a night. I'm not massively into him here. I do like Julius Randle, though, who's playing a little bit better under Mike Miller. 7,600 for Julius, and a really, really strong matchup I like. And then at centre, Mitch Robinson's at 6,900.
And Mitch Robinson says, I'll take it from here.
Giggity.
Yeah, look, it's too high. There's just too much uncertainty with what Robbo does. Bob Portis at 38, no, thank you. Well, big Alex Len, if he was at 4,000, I'd be in on it. If it's at 4,900, it's just a little bit too high of a margin to go past. Same as Damo Jones at 4,200. Let's go on to the next one. It's the Brooklyn Nets. It's the New Orleans Pelicans. The Nets are 2-point favourites on the road. The total is 229.5 points. Kyrie is out. Karis LeVert is also out, or as autocorrect will often tell you, Chris LeVert. At point guard, Spencer Dinwiddie's at 8,300. You could not find a better matchup for Dinwiddie here, so I would love this one for Spence. While Frankie Jackson at 3,500. Interesting because Redick is out for the Pelicans, so someone's going to have to get those extra minutes. Will it be Lonzo? Will they slide him back into the starting lineup? Will they put Josh the Hitman Hart there? Will it be Alexander Walker or Jackson who gets some of those bench roles? So there is a lot that could change here. As for Lonzo at 6,000, if we hear he's starting, I think he smashes the 6,000, but we need to hear that first. And otherwise, he's just a GPP guy. As for the Hitman, Josh Hart at 5,000, I really like him regardless of if he starts or not. He should be at 30 minutes a night. He should be at around 30 fantasy points, which is great at 5,000. Well, Drew Holiday's at 83, and he's been around that 40 mark. I feel relatively comfortable with Drew at that salary. Theo Pinson and David Nwaba, no. Smoke and Joe Harris is at 4,900. Harris has been up and down and not really a great DFS option, while the artist formerly known as Torian Prince, 6,100, does not get me interested at all. Brandon Ingram at 84 does. Remember, the last few games from him have been weirdly limited by fouls and some weird injury type of stuff. He's at 37 over the last 3, which is totally fine. Give him 35 minutes and he should smash through that 40. I like Ingram here in this one. Kenny Williams, Wilson Chandler, Baby Neck, no thank you. At power forward, Jarrett Allen, your good old-fashioned, reliable power forward. Jarrett Allen, 6,500 is too high for me. While Derek Favors, also a power forward for, again, reasons that make no sense. He is at 6,300, too high for the bloke whose minutes are limited at this point. And then for the big men, DeAndre Jordan's at 51. Jordan is averaging 29 over the last 5. He does have a game that's relatively friendly for DFS. At 5,100, I feel good about him getting 25 points. So I think he's a strong option. While Jackson Hayes at 51, I would much prefer to take him at 51 than Derek Favors at 63 and get you those 25-ish points. I would take Jordan over Hayes, despite Hayes having a good matchup. Centers against the Nets have historically put up pretty strong numbers, no different this season. Next up is the Orlando Magic. It is the Utah Jazz. The Jazz are 5.5-point favorites, and the total is 206.5. Mike Conley will likely return from his hamstring issue. I don't think he'll be back into 30 minutes straight away, though this could be a disaster in terms of just a suppressed pace with bad offenses, not an ideal DFS matchup. Conley's at 55. You know what? I say that like the minutes are going to be an issue, but 5,500 is bloody cheap. It would be a real shoot for the stars type of moment, but yeah, look, 55 is marginally interesting. Same as Markelle Fultz at 55. I feel more confident with Fultz at 55 because I think he's going to get 30 minutes. But even though this whole game is a little bit of a write-off. DJ Augustin was great last game at 5,100. I don't really trust that happening. The Donovan Mitchell.
He's good.
He's at 8,700. That is way too high for me. Terry Ross is at 5,000, and he doesn't really get that going all that often to get to that level, while Evan Fournier at 62 is too highly priced with Nikola Vucevic back in action. At small forward, Bojan's at 6,400. Bojan Bogdanovic, we know he can get hot, we know he can get cold. That makes him a tournament type of a player. While Johnny Isaac's at 6,800, probably a little bit high for John, but he was excellent last time out, dropping in 47 points, had a 20 and 10, had defensive numbers. The upside is there for Isaac, but for cash floor value, I'm not really certain. While Jingle and Joe Ingles was killing it without Conley. Conley's back. Will he continue to kill it? I'm not ready to stake my dollars on it. At power forward, Royce O'Neal, no thank you. Aaron Gordon at 62, and even bigger no thank you. Eddie Davis, Jeff Green, and George Niang, that's a no for me. But I'll tell you what is a yes is Nikola Vucevic, because he's at 7,900. And yes, I know Rudy Gobert is a tough matchup, but Vuc has averaged 40 points a game over Gobert the last 3 times. I've got no problem using that. He's $700 cheaper than Gobert. I would take Vuc over Gobert every day of the week here in this matchup. Let us go on to the next one. We've got the Phoenix Suns and the LA Clippers. This is a back-to-back for Phoenix, but DeAndre Ayton is going to be returning. That is the end of his suspension in this game. We don't know if Devin Booker's going to play. He missed out on Monday with that forearm contusion. Tyler Johnson is sick as well. He wasn't going to be a rotation factor only if Booker was out anyway. Of course, at point guard, you've got ravishing Rick Rubio at 83. That's high. On a back-to-back, it's tough. But if Booker's out, then there is some value in Rubio there. For the Clippers, they have got Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, and Jermichael Green all questionable. So lots of weird stuff could happen. Patrick Patterson, Terrence Mann, Derek Walton, Landry Shamet's back. All those minutes are really a little bit up in the air. We should see the fun guy Kawhi Leonard also back in after missing last game. Beverly's at 5,100. I don't feel super good about that one with his concussion as well. At shooting guard, Lou Williams is at 6,100. I think Lou at 61 is a great option if he plays. That makes him a tournament sort of a player. Booker at 8,000, I think would lean off him with. I don't think he's going to play personally. And then onto the small forwards. Paul George is at 9,600, probably a little bit too high. Oubre at 67, really like that as a tournament play. And Mo Harkless at 43 is not a DFS guy. McCall Bridges at 45 is the guy we look at in the situation that Booker's out. It also boosts Oubre's value in that spot as well. For your power forwards, the fun guy's at 10,000. I really think he's a 50-point guy waiting to happen in this one, so that's pretty good value. Šarić at 54, that's going to be a strong no from me with Ayton returning. And then to the centers, Montrezl Harrell, Ivica Zubac. I don't really like the value of either of those guys. Yeah, Harrell at 8,000 is a little bit too high. And then Baines, his value and Kaminsky are going to disappear when Ayton is back. And Ayton at 7,900. He had 46 in the first game of the season. I think 7,900 is a little bit aggressive to get into DeAndre Ayton, but the matchup's a relatively positive one, so I don't hate looking at him as a GPP type of a guy. If you go across to DraftKings and have a look at some value, now RJ Barrett comes in at 4,500. That makes me like him on DraftKings. I like Prince and Hayes and Dinwiddie, Randall, Brogdon, Trae Young, Don Mitchell's a bit better option over there, Brandon Ingram and Drew Holiday, Marcus Morris, Vucevic, Sabonis, Bud Hield, all have value over on DraftKings. That'll do it for me today, guys. Subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on YouTube. Give me a thumbs up, leave a comment down below. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram, of course, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Eric Bledsoe.